welcome everyone. This is our new episode of CXO Talks at PharmaShots. And today with me is Thomas and Annahita from Genascence. Welcome, Thomas and Annahita, to our show. Let me quickly introduce myself and then I'll come to you guys for a brief introduction. And after that, we have our discussion started. So I'm Aditya Singh. I'm a co-founder and chief editor-in-chief of PharmaShots. I'm a father of two boys, husband of a superwoman. I love to travel and explore new things. And by education, I'm a pharmacist. Coming to Thomas, to you.
Well, thanks, Aditya. Good morning, and thank you for having us both, and looking forward to the show. My name is Thomas Chalberg, and I'm a co-founder and CEO of Genascence. I'm trained as a molecular biologist, and I've been in the biotech industry for the last about 20 years. For the origins of Genascence and the background there, I'll maybe hand it off to Anita to start and tell us a little bit of history, and then I can pick it up after that.
Thanks, Aditya, for having us. My name's Annahita Keravala, and I too am a co-founder and the chief scientific officer at Genascence. I like to say that I am a gene therapist because my journey started in gene therapy about 30 years ago when I was still in Bombay doing an internship, and I came across this really cool journal article describing the novel cutting-edge new technology that was called gene therapy, and just the promise of it and the simplicity and the elegance of a one and done therapy to treat diseases had me completely hooked. And I knew that that was what I wanted to pursue. So 2 years later, when I got accepted to do a PhD at the University of Pittsburgh, that's what I wanted to kind of do it in. And I was fortunate to find a lab that was trying to develop gene therapies for severe diseases like cancer, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. The reason I say I was fortunate is because it was just a very new emerging field of research. And so I felt very lucky to be able to find that lab. And that's where I met three of our academic co-founders. Of course, I didn't know it then. My PhD advisor, Dr. Paul Robbins, Dr. Christopher Evans, who was a close collaborator of Paul's and doing pioneering work in osteoarthritis, and Dr. Stephen Givizani, who was a postdoc shared between the two of them. After I completed my PhD, I went to Stanford University School of Medicine to pursue my postdoctoral training, also in gene and cell therapies, which is where I met Tom, who was a graduate student then in the lab, and we became friends. Tom, of course, who is our co-founder and CSO, then went on to do entrepreneurial, really cool stuff. And I stayed in academia for a few more years and then went into biotech industry to develop gene therapies for disease modalities. Fast forward a few years, I brought the idea of trying to co-found a company to Tom that would do gene therapies for like major indications that had a very high unmet medical need. And Tom, who was, of course, by then an entrepreneur, but still a very strong believer in promises of gene therapy for major diseases, we decided to start Genascence. That's when I brought all the scientists together, Paul, Chris, Steve, Thomas, and myself, and we co-founded Genascence in 2017. But Tom, right. You want to kind of add some more color?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's right. Certainly, Anita gets the credit for bringing our founders together. As she mentioned, we met at Stanford, where I was there as a PhD student in molecular biology and genetics. And after Stanford, I went to Genentech, where I was held a number of roles on the commercial team over about 5 years. And then I left to start my first company, which was a very early company in the AAV gene therapy space focused on ophthalmology. Since then, I've been a serial entrepreneur and an investor, and having started a number of new companies, making both new medicines and medical devices. So I'm passionate about innovation and creating, developing new products and building companies. Of course, I think biotech is just an amazing industry. We're working with such tremendously smart people and sharing the goal of advancing cures for patients. So it's I think like a lot of biotech, executives, I find it very challenging and humbling, but also very thrilling and fulfilling.
Okay. So what what my understanding and what I'm able to see, you as a team is working in osteoarthritis. So first of all, why you chose particularly osteoarthritis?
Yeah, so great question. I think osteoarthritis is probably one of the areas of the biggest unmet need in all of medicine. I mean, it's not only a huge number of patients that suffer from osteoarthritis of the knee or some other joint like the hip, the spine, the foot, or the ankle, but there are no FDA-approved therapies beyond simply the management of pain related to osteoarthritis, and so nothing is there to really treat the underlying disease. I think when I think back when we were first learning about the opportunity to build this company, what struck me was that it was a remarkably uncrowded space, right? It was a space where there are not a lot of products in the market and there are not a lot of products in development, but yet the need for patients is huge, and the effect on patients is huge. So, building on that, I mean, the standard of care in knee osteoarthritis hasn't changed in decades. Patients are managed on basically Tylenol or Advil or other NSAIDs. Yeah. Then there's a class of injectables like steroids, for example, which actually work, but they only work for a few weeks on average, and that's where that's kind of where the big gap is, right? Steroids can't be given frequently, and there are no treatments to adequately control the pain, and nothing can slow down or stop the disease. So then you have patients sort of going decades without any treatments at all. And this results in higher, obviously disability, but also even mortality, because mobility and health are so, as we know, mobility and health are so interconnected.
All right. If you can give a bit colors about your product GNSC001 and how it's starting, what's the technology, and what gaps you are trying to fill with that one. So
great.
If you can put a light on that.
Okay, Genascence 001 is a treatment that's designed to be injected into the affected joint. And its mechanism is to block inflammation, pain, and cartilage loss and remodeling. And so it's meant to address this enormous need where there are no treatments today. In animal models, what we've seen is that it improves, not just symptoms, but also the underlying actually structure and health of the joint. And there's evidence from human clinical trials that blocking IL-1 can avoid the need for joint replacements. So we hope that, as we continue to develop GNSC001, that we'll have the opportunity to show that this, novel medicine can actually improve symptoms and also prevent disease progression.
All right. So coming on to Annahita, do you want to add some of it, or should we jump on regarding the clinical trial aspect of on this?
No, sure. I can kind of add a little more color to what exactly GNSC001 is, because it is a novel gene therapy. And by that, what we mean is that it is a recombinant adeno-associated virus that has been rendered basically harmless. So it becomes just a vehicle to carry our therapeutic gene, which is interleukin-1 receptor antagonist, also known as IL-1RA. And what this therapeutic protein does is that it binds competitively to a receptor on the cells to block interleukin-1, which is a very potent and highly inflammatory cytokine. So it's basically the central bad player that causes all of the sort of modalities of osteoarthritis: inflammation, pain, as well as cartilage destruction, causing all of the effects in the joint. But when our vector, the AAV, carries this therapeutic gene into the joint after a single injection, it deposits the therapeutic gene, IL-1RA, into the cells. And these cells then become automatic biofactories,
Yeah.
producing the therapeutic protein in the environment where the disease is. And thereby it blocks the effects of IL-1 and reduces inflammation, pain, as well as joint destruction. So it's a simple one and done gene therapy that we're hoping that would revolutionize OA treatments and help patients who are suffering for all of those years.
Right. So that was a very simple and clear explanation from a scientist.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Like it can help other people to understand very easily. Okay, talking about the recent clinical trial endpoint results, primary endpoint results for your phase 1b trial, and they were safe and well tolerated. Can you want to put some light on that, or tell us about how it's going with that?
Sure. So let me take that. So like many early stage trials, the first step is to demonstrate safety. And so the primary endpoint here was safety and tolerability. And then as a secondary endpoint, we also looked at essentially some early signs of biological effect. You can look at biomarkers or PK. In this case, there were 67 participants in this study. We called it Donatello, in keeping with our Renaissance theme. And they were randomized to different dosing regimens and compared to placebo. And so what we found was, first of all, the drug was well tolerated, and that means that there's a low frequency of related adverse effects or related side effects. The next thing we looked at was whether the vector was producing this IL-1 inhibitor called IL-1 receptor antagonist that Anita explained, and what the levels and durability over time of that expression were. And we saw basically that we were able to get an entire more than a year of expression, right? So we've so far been out to the 12-month endpoint, and several groups were still expressing the transgene well at levels that we believe are therapeutic in several of the groups. And then finally, we looked at exploratory endpoints of how the patients actually felt, essentially their pain levels. And although the study wasn't designed to show any differences between those endpoints, because it's a very early stage study, overall patients responded quite well. So we were pleased that that overall the study appeared promising and merits going to the next stage where we can formally test some of the clinical outcomes as well.
Okay, that's I would say a clear overview of how it's doing very well. What are your plans to present that data in any upcoming conference or any groundbreaking results for the study?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. We've submitted abstracts, discussing these very, very encouraging results to several conferences that are coming up in the next couple of months. They're mostly gene therapy focused or, orthopedic and rheumatology focused conferences. And we're looking forward to getting the story out there to physician audiences, but as well as patients, so that, people can get accustomed to hearing about Genascence 01 and our company who's trying to do some pretty groundbreaking work, as you call it.
That's great. And I also found, I usually found that these conferences, these are the area where you can go and grab as much as knowledge you want to, and what exactly is going on into a particular therapy area world. And what I usually get is that whenever you go to these kind of conferences, you need to be like a sponge, where you need to absorb each and everything, and then you can analyze on your back of your mind that who's doing very well, who is doing something which is a totally innovative, who's going to cater the market pretty well. And so there are different aspects, even though if you are going to going in these kind of conferences. Okay, moving on to next point is that I went to the source of information is your website. I went to your website, and I can see that your upcoming phase 2B and 3, phase 3 trial, phase 2B3 trial is upcoming in 2026. If you want to give some idea or what are the secondary endpoint you are targeting for that study?
Sure. Yeah. So that's right. So the study that we are hoping to plan next is really to move us into mid and late stage clinical trials. And actually, we just recently received RMAT designation from FDA, which should enable some kind of acceleration, both in terms of engagement with FDA and getting their feedback in terms of the study design. So we're going through that process now. But the study that we're planning is something that we believe will be very important in terms of looking at the clinical effect of GNSC001 in patients. And so essentially, we'll be measuring as a primary endpoint how patients respond, how they report their levels of pain, how they report their level of function, and how this changes over time. And this is essentially what patients care about, right? And it's also what, of course, FDA cares about. So it's the primary complaint of osteoarthritis is pain and limited activity, right? And this is, of course, what eventually leads patients to get knee replacements. And so that's also something that we'll be following. So in terms of how that data collection works, so there's a standardized instrument in order to collect this patient-reported data in terms of the pain levels and also the function, and those are sort of customized for patients with knee osteoarthritis, and they're considered validated by FDA. And so we'll collect that as patient-reported outcomes data. In terms of secondary endpoints, we're interested in how the structure of the joint changes and how that could possibly be improved with therapy. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be looking at the level of the inflammation in the joint. This is something called synovitis is the technical word, and how that synovitis or how that inflammation changes over time with treatment. We'll also look at the structure and the amount of cartilage that's there, and whether GNSC001 can prevent its loss over time. And then finally, I mentioned knee replacements. We'll look at the background rate of knee replacement over time, and whether this would be expected to change that at all, as has been shown in kind of other trials with IL-1 inhibitors. So I think this next study will be, obviously a really important moment to sort of investigate, what this therapy can do for patients.
All right. So coming on to, before, because this is getting too much of technical, before we move on to our next question, I would like to ask a pretty light question, like to make it not too scientific here. So Thomas, what do you do during your, what do you do in your leisure time?
Oh my gosh, leisure time.
And just changing the track so that it doesn't feel like that it's going to be too scientific, and we are only focused on talking about what exactly is happening with the company, is happening with the technology. I'll come back to the further questions after it, but yes.
Sure. I mean, leisure time as a biotech entrepreneur has taken a bit of a backseat over the past few years, but I have two kids. I love spending time with them. I have a 16-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy. In particular, recently that's meant seeing a lot of sports and traveling to go see a lot of sports tournaments. And I also love to exercise. I love swimming. I love to bike, around the peninsula. And I also love music. I grew up as a singer, and I'm going to sing on the podcast, though. I'm not warmed up. And recently trying to learn a little bit of guitar as well. So enjoying that.
That is you are doing a lot of things. Like as you were saying, you are out of it, but no, you are doing a good amount of things, and I appreciate that you are still getting some time out and trying to get time to give the time to your family, and that's a whatever major challenge of a lot of CEO or a lot of people in our industry face. But yeah, I'm happy to hear that. What about you, Anita?
Well, I am someone who wakes up almost every morning feeling very lucky that I get to do what I love and I'm passionate about, which is research and development of gene therapies for diseases that can help patients' lives. When I'm not at work, I love traveling and I enjoy photography. And recently, I've been blessed with a brand new niece, and spending time with her, seeing her grow up, is one of my most favorite things in the world to do right now. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
All right. Jumping back again to our technical part. So, are you seeking any collaborations in terms of clinical development and moving to any related indications for apart from the osteoarthritis?
Well, we're certainly interested in collaborations to expand the development of GNSC001 in knee OA, and that, for example, could be collaborations with pharmaceutical companies or perhaps regional partnerships. We're also building relationships with investigators that have an interest in building on our story, and that could include different indications, different settings, different joints. For example, you mentioned expanding the pipeline. One of the places that we're looking at is OA in the post-traumatic setting. So this is kind of an early onset osteoarthritis following an acute injury, something like an ACL tear.
Yeah.
And so, that might be an area where we could further, investigate. I think, yes, we're interested. At the moment, our very top priority is advancing for our next clinical study in knee osteoarthritis. And so we're sort of laser focused there for now. And then, we'll be looking to expand as we, advance into late stage development.
Okay. And what are the other pipeline, like how you're going to expand your pipeline apart from your lead product, GNSC001? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can take that one. So as Tom mentioned, in addition to, treating knee osteoarthritis with GNSC001, we, as part of our pipeline, will be looking at other joints that are affected by the disease. But in addition, interleukin-1, which is our target that we're going after, is a central bad player, not only in osteoarthritis, but several other diseases that are outside the joints. And so that is something that we would be considering. And we're also thinking about combination therapies, like doing not only providing the anti-inflammatory therapeutic gene, but also anabolic proteins, which would help build new cartilage. So by using a combination approach, what we would do is we would stop inflammation, reduce pain, and stop the joint from degrading further. But with the anabolic part of the molecule, you would then potentially regrow cartilage, thereby kind of attacking the disease from multiple ways. All that being said, we're very firm believers in the promise of gene therapy and its use in major indications and not just rare and ultra-rare diseases. And by that effect, if there are diseases that have a large unmet need and a good scientific sort of biology behind the mechanism of what causes the disease, those are indications that we're all going to be considering. But again, as Tom said, right now, we're very focused on developing GNSC001 for knee osteoarthritis and putting that in our next clinical trial and developing that for knee OA first.
All right. That's, I would say that should be a good strategy. So that focus on one product, take it to market or get it partnered, get it to the patient, start helping them with your efforts, with your years of experience, put it in, and then move on, like side by side, move on to any related indications. That sounds a good plan. Okay, my other question will be, what are the other emerging technologies which you think might help osteoarthritis treatment?
So again, being in gene therapy for all of those years, anything gene therapy related is the first thing that I laser focus on. So novel AAV vectors that have a better sort of tropism to the cells that we're trying to target within the joint, or a promoter that can drive the therapeutic protein in a stronger manner so that we can reduce the dose even further is something that we would look at. Cell therapies that have, a way to kind of actually have these cells produce the therapeutic protein once they've been modified and help, the disease environment within the joint is another option. Lipid nanoparticles are something that people have been talking as vectors in gene therapy recently.
Yeah.
But before we, commit to something like that, the toxic profile of the LNPs need to be reduced, and the fact that they can actually be taken up by the cells effectively within the joint before that can become a modality for joint diseases. In addition to that, sustained release drugs that are not necessarily gene therapy, but more small molecules. Again, we have to be familiar with what's out there in science. And again, do science in the right way, in the best way that would make the biggest impact on patients.
Gotcha. One more thing, like this is because nowadays, everything is heading towards AI, inclusion of AI in each and every field. What do you think? Is that helping you? Are you implementing any AI in your research? Or is it helping you in any other way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually just saw a talk on AI and drug discovery and development, and it was interesting how different companies and folks are using AI in the process. Obviously, our molecule is already in the clinic, so it's already been discovered in terms of our lead molecule. We use AI probably in the way a lot of folks do in order to really boost productivity internally on the team, and so we're using this kind of every day, to help. With regulatory filings and data analysis and so on. I think, at least at this point, drug development, I mean, we still need to test these drugs in people, right? And that part of running clinical trials is still, very bespoke and very handcrafted and takes a lot of time and money. So I hope that AI in the future can help streamline that process, although in the near term, I see that we're still going to be, running clinical trials in a fairly old-fashioned way of doing the randomized control trial to really test the fit of the product. I think in terms of what Anita was just talking about in terms of emerging technologies and pipeline programs, certainly this is an area where AI is just starting to be deployed, both in terms of protein therapies like antibodies, as well as in gene therapies, where you can have some real predictive power around novel sequences that have never been discovered in nature, and what their binding partners are going to be, and perhaps that will expand to novel gene therapy capsids. So that's certainly something we'll keep our eye on in terms of building the pipeline.
All right, great. I think we are end of the closing note. So if you want to, I'll come to you, Anita, first. If you want to put a final note before we close for this session.
Sure. Thanks, Aditya, first of all, for having us here and letting us share our story. As I often tell Tom and our team, I think of us as David versus Goliath. We're a small but mighty gene therapy biotech company trying to address a very, very large, unmet and difficult indication. And just as, the statue of David looks gorgeous when it was completed, it took a while to get there. I believe we're going to get there, and we're going to be successful, not just for us, but most importantly, our patients, our investors, and trying to tackle this very painful disease that affects a lot of people. I'm sure people if who have this indicated disease. I certainly do, and I know I'm going to get it because I love to hike. But it's just that it's going to be a David versus Goliath story, and keeping my fingers crossed that we are successful.
Perfect. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, thank you for having us on. It's been lovely to talk about Genascence, and hopefully your podcast audiences enjoy it. I think as we're talking now, there have been so many changes in the biotech field, and so many in particular affecting gene therapy, which I think has had really its ups and downs from a market and investor perspective over the last 10 years. one of the things that we talk about, internally is, what's the future of gene therapy, right? And there are many people, and this is kind of where gene therapy started, is for genetic diseases, because genetic diseases, the genes were well understood, but the disease biology may have not always been well understood. And so the kind of field, originated in treating these very rare monogenic diseases by gene replacement. I think what we're trying to do at Genascence is to envision a very different and innovative future where it's not about rare monogenic diseases. It's about how do we use these tools that now we know so much about in terms of, manufacturing, immunology, regulatory, QC, QA, biodistribution, et cetera. How do we leverage that knowledge into other diseases where, it cannot be treated with conventional therapies? And so the reason that osteoarthritis was such a great fit is because joints are not readily amenable to being treated by small molecules or protein therapeutics. Things rapidly leave, so there is no localized therapy. And so when you think about why use a gene therapy, why use an AAV vector, it's because the vector can essentially stay in the joint and transduce those cells and create a long-lasting effect following just a single injection. And so we're envisioning a future where gene therapy goes beyond genetic diseases to treat major public health problems like osteoarthritis. And so and I think there's a lot of reasons why this is very differentiated from traditional gene therapy. I mean, when you're trying to treat a systemic disease with a very, very large dose of vector, there are inevitably safety issues that arise, and that is completely opposite from our take, which is a very, very small dose of vector injected locally in the joint. And so the other things that come along with that are high safety, a very localized effect, a low cost relatively of producing the treatment because the dose is very low. So that means going to a major market, we can sell that for a price that's reasonable in a large market. It doesn't need to have this kind of ultra rare orphan disease pricing. So when we and there along with that, there are a number of problems that we have to solve, such as drug stability, distribution to clinics everywhere, and getting this in the hands of kind of thousands of doctors for millions of patients, as opposed to in a rare disease setting. So I think what we're trying to do at Genascence is that this democratization of gene therapy, or this bringing gene therapy to the masses, is actually extraordinarily wonderful challenge to find ourselves in, and so we're excited about next steps, and hopefully we'll be back on with lots of good news in the future.
I found you are thinking towards a noble cause, solving a major problem or solving a major issue, which is a widespread pain-related problem across the world. So I found this one is a kind of a noble cause rather than just working on a product which can help people to live their life better, have their quality of life better, because this is one of the issue which lead to immobility in most of older age or senior people. So that might help them to at least be mobilized and not to be stuck or dependent on any other person to help them out. So I found this as a noble cause. Thank you both. Pleasure talking to you both guys, and I hope we are going to discuss this sometime in future when you have a product in the market, and we can hear the remaining of the story then. So thank you both of you for coming on PharmaShots CXO Talks for the August edition, and I pray and I say all the best of luck to you guys so that we can see this product or this drug in the market.
Thanks, Aditya, for having us. We really enjoyed being here and sharing a story with you and the audience today.
Likewise, Aditya. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.